Welcome. My name is Sarah Jane Shangraw, and thank you to the Narcolepsy Network. I am located in Boston, Massachusetts. That's where I'm beaming to you from. This is the traditional territory of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket peoples, and I'm feeling really appreciative today of so many who are interested in and probably certainly have their own experience and wisdom regarding well-being. So you could start with a slideshow. Thank you. The presentation is called Mindfulness and Breathwork for Self-Regulation and Energetic Balance. Mindfulness and breathwork are two methods. Self-regulation is something we can enact anywhere if we know how. It's not rocket science, so I can't wait to share that with you. And energetic balance would be the goal of self-regulation. We can go on to the next slide. Thank you. Here's some definitions, just so you know what I'll be talking about as I talk about it. When I say energy, I'm often talking about subtle energy. This is energy in our bodies, also known as life force, chi, or prana. It's largely received, there are several kinds, but it's largely received from the environment, food, air, and it's related to both physical capacity as well as organ health and emotional states from the point of view from which I teach. And while it's mostly disregarded in many Western medical contexts in terms of research or treatment, it forms the basis of traditional Chinese medicine and many other ancient traditional types of healing. When energy is sufficient and flowing well, not stagnant, we could say we are in balance and we typically feel healthy and our bodies may function quite well. And when we're out of balance, there is some ill health typically. So in that middle circle or oval on the top row, energetic balance, this is an important concept for what we'll be looking at together today. How do we find balance? How do we find health? And first of all, how do we know when we're out of balance and have ill health? To describe that better, and as I go through this workshop, I'll be using the terms yin and yang. These are simply qualities of energy, and they're not necessarily opposite so much as two qualities that can harmonize with each other. We don't want to have excess of either yin or yang in our systems or a depletion of either yin or yang. That would create an imbalance. To be energetically balanced, we have both yin and yang at our fingertips, so to speak, in our bodies, available to us to help us function. We have a balanced capacity. We have a capacity for both. So yin can be described as quiet and receptive. Yang can be described as active, uplifting. So next, self-regulation. It's awareness of or ability to control our experience and behavior. According to the American Psychological Association, it involves monitoring, self-monitoring, self-evaluation, and self-reinforcement. The nervous system, going on to the second row. It's simply a communications network between the brain and the body. It includes the brain, speaks with the body. And one half of the nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. It is responsible for the involuntary functions in our body. And it has two major parts, which we'll be going over, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. More on that later. Mindfulness, which is one of our methods. According to Jonathan Kabat-Zinn, I love his 4-part definition. Mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose, in the present, non-judgmentally. So all 4 of those things have to be true if we are practicing mindfulness or in a mindful state. Well-being I simply consider the state of health and happiness in several domains. Different people will focus on various domains. I like to name physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. And in particular, my methods that I teach drill down to physical, emotional, and mental. Physical is of the body, emotional is of the heart, mental is of the mind. And so you'll hear me talking about the body, the heart, and the mind, and those domains of experience that we have as we move through our days. So with that, we can go to the next slide, which is simply a placeholder. We'll be practicing now together mindfulness, and we'll be practicing mindfulness of, right, we're paying attention on purpose to the body, the heart, and the mind. And I will lead about a 5 to 6 minute meditation now, where we will spend the first couple of minutes on the body, the second couple on the heart, and the second couple on the mind. And I will guide you through it so you can get the feel, if you don't already know, for what mindfulness is. So I invite you to get into a comfortable position. If you feel quite sleepy, you can stand up. That might help, actually. So you put yourself in a position that's comfortable and seems like it will be conducive or supportive of you working with your mind. I typically close my eyes. You are welcome to simply lower your gaze, but keep it soft and steady. We don't want our eyes to be darting around. And I invite you, once you're comfortable physically and have managed the visual data by closing or lowering your eyes, to bring your full attention into the body. Simply pay attention on purpose right now, without judgment, to how you feel physically. The body speaks in the language of sensation. So each of us will be feeling sensations in the body. I'm going to focus us further. To begin, let's simply feel our contact points, those areas of the body that are touching what's below. I'm seated, so it's my hips, the backs of my legs, soles of my feet on the floor, my hands resting on my lap. Paying attention to contact points. The sensations you might notice include pressure, texture, temperature. There can be a sense of weightedness at our contact points. Some of us can feel right behind the contact points in the body a sense of circulation, or there might be a sense of density or spaciousness. There's no right answer. Each of us is feeling the state of our physical body at the moment. And we're not trying to change what we find. If there's a discomfort in your body due to an injury or any sort of condition of vulnerability, we aren't trying to magically heal it at the moment, and we're not trying to ignore it either. Paying attention non-judgmentally. What's here physically now? Simply recognizing. We do this in the present moment, so we recognize. In the next moment, something might have changed. We recognize again. Next moment, something may have changed. We recognize again. Let's feel the whole body now, not just the contact points. Sometimes it seems as though there's not much to feel, and other days there's a whole symphony of overlapping sensations of various textures and intensities. And now let's bring our attention to the emotional body. You might put a hand on the heart because we have that association of the heart with emotion. What is true? What is present emotionally right now? Is there fear or a sense of disconnection or a residue of a strong emotion from something that happened earlier? See how things are. They might be pleasant, they might be unpleasant. We're not trying to change them, we're just checking in to the emotional body, moment by moment, sustaining our attention in this domain of experience. And finally, we'll go to the head. Some people will even put a hand on the head. We're going to the mental body now, our mental domain of experience. How are things now with the mind? Is there clarity or clutter? Is it calm or is it busy? Does it feel spacious and inclusive, or is there a tightness? Are you chewing on one thing? Is there a lot of thought or a certain flavor of thinking present? Not judging, just seeing how our experience is now. And before we end, because the body, heart, and mind are not so separate, see if you can relax into feeling all three at once. A sort of gestalt of being, physically, emotionally, and mentally. How are you right now? We're not trying to seek for answers or analyze, just relaxing into presence, presencing what is true physically, emotionally, and mentally. Now you can lift your gaze. We will come back together. What did you notice? So during the meditation, I gave some examples of what you might notice physically, emotionally, or mentally. I use different words at different times. I'm not expecting what I named to match everyone's experience. I think I did say mentally you might feel cluttered or busy. Emotionally, sometimes I can feel somewhat disconnected. I'm not sure what I noticed. So there's no wrong answer, right? And when I share in small groups this meditation and we note for each other out loud or in a chat what we noticed physically, emotionally, or mentally, what happens is this normalization. Some people say they felt calm and blissful, others name agitation or unsettledness. Some people have pain in their bodies or in their minds or hearts. So we get multiple similar responses often in a group, and that shows that no matter what you're feeling is it's absolutely human. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not wrong to have any experience, whether it seems positive or negative, whether it's welcome or unwelcome. So normalization is important. Also, we can have a sense of common humanity. So noticing how we are in body, heart, and mind highlights the broad bandwidth of human experience and possibility. And you can say it gives you a peek into the human condition. Educational researcher Kristen Neff says what is most common, so what is really what constitutes common humanity for us is a recognition that we all suffer. There were unpleasant things to notice. And she says, recognizing that suffering and imperfection are universal human experiences, fostering a sense of belonging, connection rather than isolation. That is common humanity. And Khalil Gibran says, some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater, but I say unto you, they are inseparable. So sometimes when we look within, as I said, there can be welcome and there can be unwelcome things to notice. But non-judgmental awareness is what we're interested in with mindfulness. And I hope you were able to catch a few glimpses of that, although it's very common when we first start to judge our experience and for our minds to be busy. So just recognizing that, that's okay too. So you could go to the next slide. Attunement and compassion. So my point in offering mindfulness today is to send us on this road of attunement and compassion. We can promote or enhance our sense of well-being in the moment by responding to what we notice when we practice mindfulness. So attunement is a greater state of awareness. As I put here on the slide, it is establishing and maintaining awareness of internal experience, body, heart, and mind, including physical, energetic, emotional, and mental states, right? So that's what we did, basically, as we were practicing attunement using mindfulness. And when we become attuned, we are then able to compassionately respond to ourselves. Compassion is what naturally arises in the heart when we meet suffering, when we meet ourselves having needs in the body, heart, or mind. So normalizing our experience as common humanity, it's common to suffer, as well as to have joys and sorrows. It helps us maintain a kind attitude toward the self. That's what compassion is. And compassion has this flavor of activity, action. So we can then go on to make adjustments toward greater balance or well-being if what we noticed was that we are out of balance. Basically, only when we notice how we are, by attuning ourselves in mindfulness, can we make appropriate adjustments with compassionate response. So let's go to the next slide. So I want to just quickly let you know that there are many physiological benefits to doing this mindfulness practice. I'm taking us on a specific journey to attune and compassionately attend to ourselves. But if you make this a regular practice, you may be boosting working memory, focus, relationship satisfaction, immune function, empathy, and self-compassion. And you may be reducing rumination, stress, anxiety, emotional reactivity. Going back to our journey, we are going to practice 2 more methods: coherence breathing and elongating the exhale. Neither of these is a mindfulness practice. We're moving into compassionate response now. With mindfulness, we have no agenda to change anything. We simply notice and try to welcome unpleasant and unpleasant things that we notice. Then we can respond. These are 2 potential responses. So I invite you to, I'm going to bring us through both, one after the other in the same practice session here. So get comfortable in the body again. It can be helpful to feel as though the spine is upright or there's something about your body that lends itself to supporting you with some energy, some wakefulness. Okay? Coherence breathing is a type of breathing. I close my eyes. You can lower your gaze or close your eyes. I put a hand on the heart and a hand on the belly. And in fact, I'm going to have our hosts take away the slide so you can see my heart and my belly. So maybe just stealing a peek at me for a moment. When we breathe in a coherent way, we are breathing low into the belly. So drawing an inhale through the nose if possible. You can hear I have some respiratory stuff going on. If you do too, maybe breathe through the mouth. But typically, if we can, through the nose, bringing that inhale down. Anatomically, we know it only goes to the lower lungs, if that. But since the diaphragm drops when we inhale, the organs below it move outward. So let's imagine we're inhaling and we're expanding through the belly. And as we exhale, we'll feel the belly underneath that hand come back in towards center. The hand on the chest, as we start to breathe together, we'll be looking for quietness. So not big movement in the chest, because that's a sort of breathing we do when we need to be in flight or fight response. With coherence breathing, we are doing something calming for ourselves. So inhale slowly through the nose and fill the belly. And exhale through the nose, letting the belly relax as the air comes out and up. So the breath is low. The breath is slowed. That's the second quality of 3. Slow your breath down. That actually means taking in less air in a given moment as you're inhaling, so you can make the inhale last longer. And then with the exhale, you are letting air out for as long as possible. Low and slow breathing. The third piece of creating coherence breathing is to breathe evenly. So as long as you can inhale, try to exhale for the same amount of time. Many of us can naturally exhale longer. So we're going to have to regulate our airflow. Maybe even count to 4 or 5 as you inhale, and then count to 4 or 5 as you exhale as a way to help you establish this evenness. Low, slow, and even. Research tells us 5.5 seconds is for many people ideal. What this breathing does is it moves the vagus nerve around in the diaphragm and other parts of the body. And that vagus nerve will go back and tell the whole nervous system that the way we're breathing indicates we feel safe. And so we can relax further and further. Take a note of how you feel, and I'm going to offer a slightly different method. There are many methods, which is nice because each of us responds slightly differently to various things. So over the next few cycles of breath, try inhaling just naturally without making a big expansion in the belly. And try exhaling as long as you had been. So we have an elongated exhale, a regular inhale. Just see how that feels in the body for a few moments. One or the other of these two methods might feel more available to you. I wanted to offer them both. And then you can lift your gaze, drop your hands, and allow the body to breathe how it wants to breathe. You may continue breathing in that low, slow, even way for a spell, or you might have an elongated exhale for a little while longer, or your breath might immediately go back to something quite subtle and shallow. There's nothing wrong with any of that. We were just trying 2 methods that, as I said, can regulate your nervous system. Now, the major mechanism of that regulation, there are several, but one we can talk about quite easily is the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in the part of the nervous system that is responsible for us calming down and deregulating. It travels through all of our organs, through so many parts of the torso. It innervates the diaphragm. Therefore, when we breathe in a certain way, we then can speak to it and give it the message that we are safe enough to relax. The relationship between the nervous system and breathing is bidirectional, by the way. So if we happen to feel quite safe and are relaxed, we might notice that our breath is naturally slowed. And we could go back to the slides and go to the next slide. How do you feel now? Just close your eyes for a moment, check in. Not trying to analyze this, just does a word occur to you? And you could go to the next window or slide. Thank you. The next slide is about the window of tolerance. This is such a neat idea. So I mentioned at the very beginning that the autonomic nervous system is responsible for the involuntary physiologic processes such as heart rate. I didn't mention examples then, but blood pressure, respiration, digestion. And it has two states, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Go to the right column of the slide, you'll see that I have sympathetic dominance on top and parasympathetic dominance on the bottom. When your autonomic nervous system is experiencing sympathetic dominance, you are preparing the body for fight or flight responses, or you're being prepared by the nervous system. That means an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. This is in response to stressors, and it prepares us to be able to do what we need to do to get ourselves out of harm's way into safety. So we need a lot of energy. It's a very young state. Below that, parasympathetic dominance. When we are in this state, we're relaxed. The body wants to conserve energy for later. The body is maintaining normal functions, resting and digesting. The heart rate is slow. And now if you go to the middle column, at the top you see hypoarousal. That is a state of sympathetic dominance. That is an activated state. At the bottom you see hypoarousal. That's a parasympathetic state. And with hypoarousal, we may go into a fawning or a freezing kind of mode. These are extreme sympathetic and parasympathetic states. They're at the very top and the very bottom of what we call the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance itself is a place of experience, of existing, where our nervous system may activate a bit, and then it may deactivate a bit, depending on our environment and what's needed, what response we need to give based on our environment. Some activating and deactivating within that window. And you'll see in the orange bar, just between the window of tolerance, which is a very healthy, imbalanced state, and hypoarousal, where we're overly activated, you'll see the words, can't calm down. So as you see that window on the right that goes out of our green window of tolerance up into hypoarousal, we're talking about states of overactivity and excess yang. And then on the other hand, we're talking about states of underactivity and excess yin when we're moving out of the window of tolerance and we are shutting down into hypoarousal. So you'll see also that from each of these extremes, there's an arrow moving inward toward the window of tolerance. Those are our methods that we can use to tolerate more states. The window of tolerance can actually grow. It can push hypoarousal up and hyperarousal up and hypoarousal down, so that we have a greater capacity to tolerate things in our environment that might otherwise send us into fight and flight or into freeze and fawn. So you can go to the next slide. I just want to note with this slide that when we're interested in upregulating ourselves because we are too low, we are in hypoarousal, we can use mindfulness, we can use breathwork, We can use physical activity, such as shaking. If you don't know what that is, maybe you'll have a chance at a future lifestyle workshop to learn that. If we are hyperactive or in hypoarousal, I should say, we want to downregulate. Again, we can use mindfulness and breath work to come into balance in the center. We can also use slow rhythmic movements, and we can rock side to side. There are actually many, many methods for upregulating and downregulating. I am happy to close out this portion of the webinar and to take questions. Here is my website if you're interested in getting in touch. I do offer classes online and in person, courses and coaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane, and welcome everyone. This is going to be our Q&A section. We have a few questions, but before we start, we thought while more of you are on, what we would do is do a little practice session live so that you can experience it, and then if you have more questions, ask them. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah Jane.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for being here. I thought I would just go back to the coherence breathing and add a little bit of visualization into it to give folks who are more visually oriented a chance to bring that capacity, if they'd like, into some regulating. So I invite you to get comfortable. You can sit up or you can lie back or you can stand up. So from here, we'll start breathing through the nose, if that feels comfortable enough. And we'll send our inhale through the nose all the way down to expand the belly. Fill the belly with your inhale. Maybe put a hand on the chest to make sure that's not really involved. And your exhales can be about the belly coming back to center. I'm going to adjust my camera so you can see a little bit. Right, so in the coherence breathing, we're expanding the belly on the inhale and it retracts in the exhale. It's low, it's slow, and the inhale to exhale ratio is relatively even. So each of us does that for ourselves. You might not be breathing in concert, that's okay. You might close your eyes or lower your gaze and imagine that on every inhale, whatever is touching something below your contact points, maybe your feet, you can inhale up through the legs, perhaps, the conduits of the legs, earth energy. So energy from below that's very grounding. On your exhales, just hold that energy as you're exhaling in the low belly, behind your hand that's on the low belly, if you've got a hand in each place. A few cycles of breath like that. Inhaling from below, feeling grounded, placed, stable, and exhaling, just relaxing, hosting, capacitating a sense of stability as you host the earth energy. After a few cycles of breath like that, we are going to now, on our inhales, imagine we could draw, let's call it sky energy, energy from the air and the environment above us, down through the crown of the head to the heart. And on our exhales, we're just relaxing and hosting the sky energy in the heart. So we're using our environment, our imaginations, we're visualizing. And where the earth energy was grounding, the sky energy is very uplifting. It's busier, it's active energy. It's the yang energy, whereas the earth energy is yin energy. Okay, and after a few cycles of breath like that, let's, on our next inhales, we will draw the yang energy that's right now in the heart that we sent there from the sky. We're going to draw it down to the belly on the inhale. And on the exhale, the low belly is hosting an intermingling of earth and sky energy, yin and yang, receptive and active. So our inhales, we're drawing Active yang, energy downward into the belly, harmonizing the sense of being both grounded and receptive on the one hand, and uplifted and active on the other. So we're relaxed and yet we are alert. We are still, but we are prepared to move if that were needed. Right. Now let go of imagining you could move energy from your environment in and then move it around within your body. Let go of the coherence breathing and just take a few cycles of breath where the body is breathing how it wants to, no longer manipulating, becoming mindful of how we feel, letting go that enhancement and balancing practice. It's called the joining of earth and sky energy in the human body. So I'd be happy to take questions if there are any.
We do have a few questions. And thank you, Sarah Jane. It's always nice to sort of virtually walk through these kinds of things. I'm going to read you the first question because I bet some other people on the call may have similar experiences given
Sure.
narcolepsy and how it affects
Okay.
folks. So first, they want to thank you, Sarah Jane. And it says, I want to develop a regular meditation practice, but, and many others here, I'm sure, have the curse of an anxious mind and sleepy body. Now, I think you've heard that before, even with people who do not have narcolepsy, and that sleepiness makes everything feel heavy and uphill. Being sleepy lowers my mental inhibition such that it's harder to work the muscles of mindfulness, to motivate to practice, but also to exercise self-compassion, to train myself to return to the breath. Any thoughts? So any thoughts on how to return to the
Mm,
breath when you're anxious but you're still tired. It's like that duality.
yeah, absolutely. Actually, this brings to mind for me some myths that I think we all hold about what mindfulness meditation is before we spend many, many hours doing it and have some instruction, some methodical instruction. And one is that when we become dull or heavy and sort of go off into space and are not really present, that we're not meditating, and that it's actually part of the dance of meditation, I would like to say. The dance is between wakefulness and awareness on the one hand, and being distracted on the other. And there's this really special moment, I'm sure you know it, when you sort of checked out and then you realize, oh, wait, I was supposed to be minding my breath or feeling my body or whatever the object of the meditation, mindfulness meditation was. That is a wakeful moment. So remember that when you have that realization, that aha, wait a minute, this is what it was not intending to do, that's an energetic moment. You've just come back. So I like to encourage people to use that moment that of clarity. That's what it is. Like, oh, this is what's happening. Um, and use it and simply imagine you could use it to lift your attention back to the intended object and begin again. It doesn't matter how many times you begin again. It
So,
doesn't matter.
Sarah Jane, the intended object in this case, would that be the breath or could that be something else?
It could be something else. It could be the body, which I mentioned. That's what we did in our first exercise in this workshop. We used the body. And there's another thing I'd like to mention, which is very ancient, which is this idea that when you're meditating, it's really helpful sometimes to take a few cycles of breath, It's like suspend that sense of mindfulness being having no agenda and not wanting to change anything for a few moments. Suspend that and take a few inhales that are a little bit more lively, longer than you would normally do. Those are wakeful breaths. That will tell the nervous system, come on, let's come back. Let's come back. And then once you've felt that energy, you can go back to that pure receptive mindfulness where you have no agenda. That's taught. It's written about in the Satipatthana Sutta, which is it's the description of mindfulness meditation as written by people who lived just a few centuries after the Buddha. And they said that's how he taught it. And that was written 2,000 years ago. Yes. So,
There's
yes.
to learn here. One of the things, this is actually a great question. Before I get to this one, I want to follow up on this other question, which was about self-compassion, which is
Oh, yeah.
cultivating that's actually a big issue everywhere, but with having a sleep disorder,
Okay.
people
Yeah.
look down on you, you're just lazy, you're tired, whatever it is. So having compassion for wherever you are,
Mhm.
how do you do that in this practice? What are some tools here
Mhm.
that maybe we didn't
Oh,
know about?
yeah. Well, I'll go back to that aha moment where you realize that you weren't doing what you were intended, that you didn't maybe have the energy for it, um, and that you were maybe some people consider it or have said spacing out or becoming dull. In that moment, I often actually give a little smile to myself. So if you were watching me meditate, every once in a while, you'll see me go from just a passive face to, and that's me going, oh, there I go again. There I go again. I'm being human. I felt a little dull. I was getting a bit sleepy. I was checking out. It happens. So there's this normalization that happens when we meditate in groups, we take classes together, and we share our experience. That's really helpful. But then we have to train up that inner voice of compassion, especially if we have a really strong internal critic voice. We need to train up that compassionate, like, oh, yep, that happened. That happens. I'm going back to the matter at hand, which is mindfulness.
Thank you. That was a big question. It had a lot in it. I have a simpler question, but it's still related here that came in. Can you help me understand the difference between focusing on your emotions and your mind?
Oh, that's a great question.
Mhm.
Yeah. So in Buddhist based mindfulness, we learn um, that the heart and the mind are actually considered one organ, and and thoughts are generated by that organ. And so there's no difference. And so way back when, people didn't distinguish like we distinguish now. So that can be really fun to know. And if you were to do Buddhist based mindfulness, you wouldn't find such a difference. But because I did talk about a difference, and a lot of people do in our time and age, I would say, hmm, mental states, like what's going on with the mind, it can often be described as the same as the flavor of the thoughts that are running through the mind. And that might be really different from how you feel about being here. So I might be thinking about something in the future or the past, but emotions are usually quite immediate. So that's one difference, I would say. I hope that's helpful.
That is really helpful. We have time for one more question. And so I think this is a question about we understand the mechanics of these different tools. When you work with people, like if you're working one-on-one or you're working with a group of people and people have different things they need, like what is your advice like to
Mhm.
around trying different ways to
Yeah.
practice mindfulness? Because I think people have this idea that there's one way. And
Oh, yeah. No, there's so many different
so what
ways.
are the tools? And then we probably should close since we're almost
Okay. Sure, sure. Well, we don't have time for me to describe all of the different ways we might work, but especially when I work on one-on-one with someone, we try a bunch of different things and we see what works for someone. And in a group, I try to give different examples of practices that can be useful. One size does not fit all. Some people have an experience of previous illness or something that happened when they were younger that makes them actually become quite anxious when they're paying attention to the breath. And I would never then guide a breath focused meditation for that person or use the breath as the tool for self regulation. So many different options. The thing is to read a book about mindfulness and regulation, or work with a teacher, or go to a class. I did a drop in for beginners for years. I went to a beginner's drop in weekly at a local meditation center and accumulated a sense of, oh, there's this method, there's that method, and started to get to know what was right for me.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's really complicated, and maybe that's why it can feel challenging or
I'm sure that makes it feel challenging, but I would say that ultimately we're just attuning and attending. So, right? So once we pay attention and we know we want to feel different than we're feeling, or we want to behave differently than we're behaving, then I think that our instincts are pretty good about what to do, but a daily practice will help us implement in an acute situation, help us implement the tool more quickly and readily because we'll be so familiar with it.
so that I think this is a great way to end attuning and attending because it's a constant for someone with narcolepsy or IH. It's a constant thing around what is right for me at what time because
Mhm.
time works differently.
Yeah.
Cells work differently. So being able to validate yourself wherever you are, really, really important. This could be a useful tool.